Everyone. We are here, like every Wednesday, very long time, companies are here for themselves, but today we have the, benefit of hearing from Dewberry, who has been here, I would say probably have been here frequent, presenters of trying to recruit. And guess what? We have 3 of the graduates here, successful. Jonathan, Ryan, and another Jonathan. No, they're not related. Jason.
Same last name.
Same last name, Gibson. But thank you all for coming. Dewberry is a reputable company. They've been very successful in all that they've done. Multiple locations, as he will be expanding upon it. Tell us about your business operation. Tell them how the challenges you have, the choices that you have when you graduate from the program, and give them some wake up call of where you find yourself, what not to do, what to do, take advice. Like we did take advice, and they're very successful. Thank you very much for the food. Appreciate it very much. The floor is yours.
Okay. As Dr. Rammer said, I'm Jonathan Gibson. It's Ryan Daniel and Jason Gibson. Ryan and I work in the Panama City, Florida office, and Jason works over there in our Daphne office. We have, under what I manage, we have 4 offices. We have Daphne, the furthest one to the west, and you come over to Panama City, and then we have one in Orlando and one in Sarasota. Sarasota is kind of down there on the southwest coast of Florida, about midway down. It's the farthest office we have to the south. It's kind of one of our smaller offices. We run 2.5, sometimes 3 crews out of that office. But our Orlando office does a lot of transportation work and land development. Panama City does a lot of transportation and land development, and Daphne does a lot of land development work. I graduated here in 2006. Jason, you graduated what, 07?
December 06.
06, and Ryan,
2018.
2018. So there's a pretty decent age gap between us. Jason and I were actually neighbors in Troy Place Apartments when we first were up here to get started. But anyway, really enjoyed my time here at Troy. I don't know how many of y'all knew you wanted to be surveyors. I did not. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I started out in engineering. Baseball coach of mine when I was a kid was a surveyor. I didn't know what surveying was. And he and I were talking one day, and I told him I really didn't care for engineering and the classes and whatnot. And he said, well, you ever thought about surveying? And I said, no, I didn't know what it was. Looked it up. I could either go to UF or come to Troy. I'm from a little town called Chipley. Looks a lot more like Troy than UF does. So Troy was where I decided to come. Definitely glad I came here. Anyway, so the Dewberry, Dewberry itself was founded by a gentleman named Sid Dewberry. He actually passed away about 2 years ago. I think he was in his late 90s. He was a surveyor. He started out surveying up and around Washington, D.C., Virginia area, and hired in some engineers, and it became Dewberry Engineers. I don't know if your land development manual has Dewberry on the front of it. Mine does. I didn't know who Dewberry was when I was here before, but they're on my land development manual that we had for our land development class. Anyway, it's kind of a fortuitous thing for me to end up at Dewberry at some point in my career. Dewberry is about, I think, at the last I checked, roughly 2,800 employees. The majority of those employees are on the eastern coast, from New York south to here in Florida. We have an office in Denver, Colorado. We have one in California. We have one in Birmingham. The one in Birmingham is engineering only. They don't have any surveyors out of it yet. Probably an area we're going to end up trying to focus in on and try to get some surveying started in there. But anyway, last year Dewberry as a whole did somewhere around $850 million worth of work. And based on what we did the year before, we're projecting somewhere just under $1 billion for next year. So like most companies, Dewberry is getting, growing, getting bigger. getting more into the different markets throughout the nation. One of our biggest clients is FEMA. We do a lot of work with FEMA, especially in Florida post-hurricane. FEMA comes in, hire Dewberry, we go in and we do some survey work and some design work for some mobile housing areas for folks that lost their house, things like that in hurricane. And one thing about FEMA is if they pick somebody that they like working with, they just continue to feed work. So we do a lot of work with them, a lot of resiliency work. A big, kind of a coin phrase here recently has been resiliency, and that is, the federal government's giving grants out to small municipal governments to build up their public facilities for resiliency, storm issues, sea level rise, things like that. So there's a lot of money out there for that. And as part of that, we get to do some survey work that they benefit from. So this is kind of what I'm going to go over, our general Dewberry overview, surveying, and then our new technology and geospatial approach to projects. And then we'll have a question time. I'll try to go through this pretty quick. I think last year I spent maybe a little bit longer than I should have. By this point, you all have seen other companies come in. You're going to notice that the majority of the companies that are more than a mom and pop, we pretty much all have generally the same benefits, right? And we're going to operate generally in the same way. And I say generally, some of the companies, big publicly traded companies may have some leadership teams that you never meet, right? That's not the way it is with Dewberry. I go to meetings once every 2 months with the other leadership team, and the CEO is usually there, and then occasionally the president, the owner, Barry Dewberry is there. Barry's not an engineer or a surveyor. Barry is a psychologist by degree, but really down to earth, really easy guy to talk to. So I think that's one of the things that separates Dewberry from some of the other larger corporations with 2,000 plus individuals is the fact that you can get in touch with the leadership anytime you want to. If you have any problems, any questions, anything, you're not a number on a timesheet. You're an actual person, and they get to know you. These are some of our office locations here scattered throughout. Like I said, majority of the offices are here on that kind of eastern seaboard there. And you see how many offices there are in Florida here, in lower Alabama. I mean, there's a ton of stuff going on here. Florida right now, I can't remember exactly what the fund number is, but there is a huge transportation funding initiative going on in Florida. There's two funding initiatives. One is clean water, right? Down in the central Florida area, there's tons of people, during COVID, a lot of people from up in this region and over here moved here. I'm sure you all see that kind of in your hometowns, whatnot. People were coming down here because things were open. People were still working, things were happening. Not to mention, Florida is no state income tax, right? So if you take a job in, say, Alabama, Georgia, somewhere that has a state income tax, you're going to be paying a little bit more in taxes than you would in Florida out of your check. Now, in Florida, you have taxes on purchased items, things like that. But anyway, there are two big funding initiatives. One's clean water, one's transportation. We have a water group, right? They're in charge of water treatment plants. With the number of folks and infrastructure that we have in place right now, the number of folks that are moving into Florida, the infrastructure just can't withstand all of that, right? So there's a lot of money going into rebuilding infrastructure and in turn into water treatment facilities and clean water. A lot of Florida is, a lot of people are on wells in Florida and things like that. With the number of people that are moving here, they're right now working on trying to figure out how to use desalinization plants and things like that to start using some of that Gulf and East Coast water over there out of the Atlantic. So there's a lot of those initiatives going on. Transportation is huge in Florida, right? One of the reasons transportation in Florida is huge, hurricanes. You have to have huge arterial corridors to get a lot of people away from the coast when a hurricane comes. We have had 2 pretty decent hurricanes in the past 6 years here in Florida. The last one being Hurricane Ian that came in right down here and then kind of went at a 45 right up the state. Right now, we're working with some of our partners in the DEO, which is the Department of Economic Opportunity, which is state tax money, federal tax money to put people back in houses that didn't have insurance, don't have enough money to rebuild. So right now, just in this region right here, there's about 2,000 or 3,000 we have on a list right now, what they call unmet needs. Not all of those will need survey, but the majority of them will if they rebuild. So looking at that strip across Florida right there, we have about 3 years worth of survey work to do, which would be more work than we could do and get done. So we're going to have to hire other firms to help us with that. But anyway, there's a lot of opportunity in Florida right now, regardless of where you go. If you're a big Disney World fan, our office is like 6 or 8 miles from there. Not a big Disney World fan, but if you are, it's not far. Anyway, we've got another water office up here in Jacksonville. There used to be a survey department out of Jacksonville, but it got to where there wasn't enough engineering presence to keep us pushing into other jobs. It was a big district DOT office that we did a lot of work out of. But as the gentleman that ran that office got close to retirement, it took, we couldn't find anybody to replace him. And that office just kind of went away and became a engineering only office. But again, with that engineering group there, we're going back trying to, kind of get our presence back in there in Jacksonville in terms of surveying. This was the 488 million. I was telling you this year was 850. So this was 2021 revenue. So we've grown and almost doubled in the past 2 years. So 450 million at the end of 2023. If you look at a pie chart, our marketers send out pie charts every now and then. The 2 big winners are transportation and water. So we do a ton of that. And again, Florida is the big winner in terms of transportation. One of our clients that we work for, the Central Florida Expressway, I think they, between engineering and surveying, we invoice them somewhere around $500,000 a month for work that we do, which is a lot. I don't invoice $500,000 a month in all of the projects that we do. So here's more of our southeast look. What we actually have an office now in South Carolina that we work out of as well. We've got these offices in North Carolina. These are the Dewberry legacy offices. This is where Dewberry started, and they started to radiate out of and come into different locations. We have a geospatial department here in Tampa. I'll talk about them kind of when we get to the end. The geospatial group has 3 airplanes, 3 different LiDAR sensors. One of them is a Topo Valley LiDAR I'll talk about here in just a little bit. Really interesting cutting edge type of equipment. And we have a contract to map it's called the Florida Seafloor Initiative. And we've recently, Ryan has been working on a project where we map the coastline. It starts here at Alabama and comes all the way down to just above Tampa. So we're mapping or have mapped, roughly 25% of the Florida coastline with the Topo Valley LiDAR that our Tampa group uses. And we work simultaneously with them back and forth. We provide the ground control for them and for all of their jobs. One of the things that our marketers usually go over is kind of what they call the Dewberry at work, kind of our core values and behaviors: honesty, passion, contribution, individualism, and perseverance. One of the things for me, right, that I like about Dewberry, they allow you to have that kind of individualism within the business. So Dewberry has their standard way of doing things, but they like to talk about the different approaches. They like to get others' input. As a team, I don't tell them what to do. We look for input together and try to talk about how we're going to approach things. You know, I don't know everything, and neither does anybody else that we work with, but together we know a lot. And if we can communicate that, you know, through individualism, then, you know, we're doing really well. Contribution, we always put the client first, right? Everybody that you talk to is probably going to say the same thing, and they do, because that's the only way to run a business. You put your client first, and you have to have passion about what it is you're doing. You have to be passionate about what you do, and if you are, then you're going to do it very well. So whoever you go to work for, you know, in your career is going to grow if you show the passion for what it is you do. If you do more than just show up, you know, and do your job and then take a check. If you show that contribution and the passion for what you do, your career is going to grow. These are our major practice areas: architecture, landscaping, landscape architecture, building engineering, design, build, emergency management, environmental management, federal programs. Like I said, FEMA is one of our biggest clients. Dewberry is definitely in the federal space, right? We do a lot of DoD work, especially around those core areas around Washington, D.C., up in New York. We do a lot of Department of Defense work. Right now, we're working on a really large project at Tyndall Air Force Base in Panama City that was basically obliterated by Hurricane Michael back in 2018. If you look up Tyndall Air Force Base, kind of the catchphrase is base of the future. There's a lot of money being spent at Tyndall Air Force Base. There are people from all over the nation who are working out at Tyndall. There's so many contractors, so many surveyors, so many engineers that are working on so many projects out there. And we had the good luck to be chosen to set all of the control for all of that work out there. So for the design for what they call Zone 4 at Tyndall, they elected to use mobile LiDAR and aerial LiDAR and patch that in to cover a really, really large area on a base where at some point we were out there setting control on that job. And as we would come in, we would set control. A couple days later, we'd come back, we'd be running levels through there. They've already demoed a portion of the road that we set control on. So it was a really, really interesting job, and it still is. We're still getting requests to go out and check things because some of the stuff has changed over time. But it's been a really great job, really interesting job. We were out there for months setting control. We did not collect the mobile LiDAR. GPI, they probably have been here this year. Angela Bailey and her team, they went out there and they collected the mobile LiDAR for us. And they also collected the aerial LiDAR because we couldn't get our plane, any one of our planes there at the time they needed it. And working on an Air Force base, to get airspace, you have to jump through a lot of hoops, right? They don't just let anybody fly over the Air Force base. And so it took some time, and as a matter of fact, Ryan was pretty instrumental in making sure we had the connection between the base officials and the folks at GPI to make sure that everybody was on the same page, that we knew we could fly and when we could fly. And then we had to deal with weather issues, which you always have to when you're doing anything with terms of remote sensing. Here are kind of our core clients. I think everybody has probably the same makeup: government agencies, commercial clients, private developers. We do a lot of private development in Panama City. A lot of people are moving there. You got the beach there, world's most beautiful beaches, I guess they call it. I'm not a beach person myself. I burn, so I try not to get out there on the sand and look at the water. I'm going to be out there, I'm fishing or doing something else. But anyway, we do a lot of land development work. There's one of our core clients there in Panama City is the St. Joe Company. St. Joe Company was a timber company for years and years and years. They also started a chemical company for paper products. And then they kind of I think probably in the late 80s, early 90s, they started developing some of their property. Now they're the biggest developer in our area. We've done more subdivision plats than I can count for the St. Joe Company. They like Dewberry. They like what we do. They like our attention to detail, how quickly we get on the projects. We have recently started integrating some LiDAR into some of their large projects. So instead of going out topo in a 40-acre tract out of 2,500 so that they can do a phase of a subdivision, we will go out and we will use LiDAR and we will prepare a topo of the entire 2,000 acres. And then we will cut those out into boundaries as they're ready to go. So they like that we're able to do that. It gives them some options. They can get all the information up front. They can do a phase. When they get that phase sold, they can jump into another phase. They don't have to wait on more survey work each time they get ready to go for a plat. Inside Dewberry, so we've got really good health insurance. We got flex spending accounts. I took advantage of that this year with like a medical spending account. I have 2 kids. Seems like we're always seeing a doctor about something. So that's good for us. That money's pre-tax. So they take it out, put it in an account, and you don't, get charged taxes on that at the end of the year. We got wellness programs, life insurance, 401k, profit sharing. This, guys, if you learn anything today, take advantage of that wherever it is you go. Okay. If you start right now putting money in a 401k, whatever employer you go to work for, if they offer 2% or 3%, put 2 or 3% in your account. That's free money that they give you. And for you at your ages, that's going to grow very, very quickly. Okay. Don't wait to do that. All right. It's if you build your home economics around the money that you put into this, you'll be fine and you'll be happier 20 years, 30 years from now, because you're going to have some real money put back if you don't wait. If you start putting money in it, even in just a small amount, 2 or 3%, the day you start working, and somebody else waits 15 years and then they put 4 times the amount into their 401k, by the time you both retire, you're going to have more money than they did and put less in. So take advantage of that. 8.5 paid holidays. We have a new holiday thing this year. They took away President's Day and made it a floating holiday. So you can use it anytime you want. You can use it to fish. Call it my floating holiday. When I use it, I'm usually fishing. And then we have a shared leave program. Back during COVID, this kind of also will set Dewberry apart from others. I have some other friends that were either engineers, surveyors, some of the other larger companies. COVID was out. Nobody really knew what was going to happen. Nobody really could make any decisions. They were worried that work was just going to slack off, cut off. Dewberry did not send out the emails asking for people to take a 10% pay cut. Dewberry did not ask people to get vaccinated or any of those other things. Obviously, that was something that was important to leadership, was if we're going to work on federal projects, they require you to be vaccinated, one thing or the other. The leadership at Dewberry did not come out and say, hey, this is what we have to do, this is what everybody has to do. They were very specific about what they said and how they approached things, okay? And they gave it long enough for it to kind of be less of an important thing than what it was to start with. And so nobody lost a job over it, none of that. The shared leave program, we had a pool. Somebody had to be off. They didn't have any annual leave to use or personal leave. They got leave out of the pool, right? So the last time I talked to the HR director, who recently passed away, she told me that the way they did it, we had no one that had to be out for COVID or any other illness that did not have access to that shared leave program. So nobody went unpaid. That's part of having a privately owned business, especially the size of Dewberry. Has a lot of resources and it's privately held, so he has a board of directors that he goes through, but it's board of directors that are picked by the owner. We have a buddy program. We have professional development opportunities, extensive research, technological resources. The way we kind of all come together and approach things, I feel like sets us apart from other companies as well. We try to do some in-house networking amongst offices. We try to make that if you're interested in that. Some people don't want to do that. But if you're interested in that, we try to make, give you the opportunity to network with other young professionals in your career field or even outside. We've got our own internal learning center, professional development programs and things like that, like most. Let's see, tuition reimbursement. Most companies of our size are going to have tuition reimbursement. They take care of all your professional registrations and your societies, ASPLS. They pay the fee for that. I just renewed my Alabama license this year. I didn't have to. I paid for it. They paid me back. All my professional associations, I get paid for. So it doesn't cost me anything. So that's kind of the HR thing. Probably took a little longer than I needed to on that, but here are Alabama and Florida offices where we can really kind of dive in. We've got an office in Huntsville, office in Birmingham. Both of those offices have engineering, no surveying yet. Like I said earlier, surveying is there in Daphne. We got the survey in Panama City, Orlando, and then there's Sarasota there, and then our geospatial office is here. We also have some transportation surveyors in the land, but they're CAD techs. We don't have any survey crews that dispatch out of the land office. We've got 66 surveying and mapping professionals in this region, 10 licensed PSMs, 13 survey technicians, and we used to have 22 crews. I think there's more than that now. I have to count them, but anyway, we continue to grow. And so what we're looking for is more help in the office, right? We can get the crews and we can get the work. It's just right now we're kind of bottlenecked with getting the work done. So we don't write as many proposals as we can. And we're specific with who we work with because we need some more help, in the office, processing all of the field work. So here are our geomatic services, photogrammetry, LiDAR, GIS, land development, survey, and planning. A lot of the GIS comes out of our geospatial group. Most of those are our GISPs, so the GIS professionals. And that geospatial group, they are spread all over the United States. I was out in Denver last year for Geo Week. Did not go this year. Probably should have. I just had some other traveling that I had to do. But I met a number of our geospatial technicians from Wyoming, California, out there in Denver. Some of the Florida folks came in. That career is basically tailor-made for folks to be able to work remote, right? They're working on, I met the guy that writes code for our little AI program that we use, deep learning models and things like that to post-process these remote sensing acquisitions. A lot of that wasn't really a big thing. When I was here back in the early 2000s, remote sensing was basically just aerial photography. But LiDAR has kind of jumped ahead in technology. And so we have some really, really intelligent, high-end folks in the GIS department or geospatial group. So we do transportation, utility designation, survey, SU work. hydrographic surveys, GEC reviews for DOT and the Expressway Authority. We have a team that does our transportation mapping reviews. They all work remote. But if you go to any transportation meeting in Florida and you hear about GEC reviews, Central Florida Expressway teams and things like that, the Dewberry team is the one that everybody wants reviewing their mapping. They want the Dewberry team working on it. That team is run by one of our senior PLSs. Her name is Sheila Ware. She's in Atlanta. Most of her staff is either in Sarasota or DeLand, and they all work together. They've got a process that goes through that they go through for all of those, and they've made a name for themselves. So they're doing really well, and they're limited to what they can do by the number that they have as well. So the more of that we have, the more staff we have in that particular area, the more work we're going to be able to have and to take in. We do a lot of work for FPL, or you'll see down here it says NextEra. FPL and NextEra owns FPL, but they have a weird relationship. FPL is not a big fan of NextEra and whatnot, but they're owned by them. So we do a lot of work for FPL and NextEra. They make sure you call one thing and the other. If you write a proposal to FPL, it better not say NextEra. We learned that last year at some point. We went to dinner with some of the FPL folks, and they corrected us real quick about the difference between the two, even though they're owned by the same company. So this is kind of the mix of work that we have. You see, it's fairly diverse throughout the state. Here's one of our surveys. This is one we actually finished up last year. We brought this up here and kind of showed it off last year. The interesting thing is on our way up here today, we got an email about this project that they're getting ready to close finally. This is 3,500 acres in Gulf County. We surveyed the boundary for a developer. We had our geospatial group come up and fly it with LiDAR. And then we sent our crews in. There's some canals and things. This used to be a big hunting preserve. There's some canals in there, and then there's some areas where the hurricane damaged a bunch of trees and things. We had to have crews on the ground picking up ground topo that we could patch into the LiDAR. As good as LiDAR is, you still need folks on the ground to pick up certain items, and then you marry those things together. You don't just go out, take LiDAR and take the desktop technicians go in there and put in brake lines to create surface. We've looked at the difference between the two. When you do the field work and you merge them together, you get a more robust picture of what's going on the ground. The great thing about LiDAR is I think there's 30 points per square meter. Most of our AutoCAD does not know how to use that many points. It will not load them. Civil 3D won't load that many points. So we rely on our spatial folks with their equipment to load all that in, and then we grid it out and then create a topo out of it. Here's one of our projects on the beach. One of the interesting things about projects on the beach in Florida, you have a coastal construction control line. That line has been established by the state. Anything seaward of that line has to be permitted in a different way than anything landward of that line. So when you do a survey, they'll get the individual will get a permit to build seaward of that line, but you have to show all of the other improvements. If there's another sheet on this, you'll see that. But this is the overall view showing where we tied into the monuments that established the coastal construction control line. Yeah. So this was a hotel that we did. This is on the beach side. This is kind of the north side of the road. So we go in and we locate all of the improvements within 150 feet either side of the property that we're working. We have to show where all of those improvements exist in relationship to the coastal construction control line. And then the permitting agency used this information to give a permit to the developer so that they can build. Here's one of our condominium surveys. We don't do as many of these as we used to do. I don't know if it's because they're not doing that many condominiums or they're just really difficult to do to begin with. Because you have to go in, you see right here, each condominium is an association. The outside, this is the actual building. These are all common areas here. So it's basically a subdivision plat, right? They call it a condominium survey, but it's essentially a subdivision plat. And then for each lot is each unit, right? We have to go inside each one of the units and measure the square footage of the unit. You could use the design plans, but then that wouldn't be a true picture of the actual as-built of the inside of the unit. Because the individual that's buying it is buying it based on square feet, and they have personal ownership of that square foot. So basically, these documents are the legal description for each unit in the condominium. And a lot of the floors are laid out the same, so you just, it's like wash, rinse, and repeat for these drawings, although the measurements are all of each individual condo unit. Let's talk about our big land developer in Panama City, St. Joe Company. This is one of the plats that we did for them. I think we're now on phase 3. Yeah, so this was 1A of 3 phases, or 1A, 1B, and 1C. The interesting thing about this plat right here is the Bay County / Panama City municipal limits is right here down the middle. So we had to work with the city and the county with this particular plat, whereas normally you work with one or the other. So anyway, this is just a standard subdivision that we work on. Our engineers designed it and we platted it. Here's some of the right-of-way transportation mapping. You probably won't see as much information on any drawings anywhere as you will on right-of-way drawings. There's so much information on right-of-way mapping drawings. And that's why our team is sought after by everybody, because they're very good at making sure that this information that's on here is exactly what should be on there with no mistakes. Because they're going to, either the Central Florida Expressway or FDOT or even some of the municipal governments are using these documents to either purchase land for roadways or to go out and delineate the right of way so that they know that, you know, what they have and nobody's encroaching into the right of way. Here's some of our roadway design survey. So we have a large transportation design group in Orlando. They we're in a 20-story large corporate building. We have 3 floors. One complete floor is the folks that do this transportation design. They do transportation design for the county and municipal clients, the FDOT, and for the Central Florida Expressway. Central Florida Expressway is pretty much in Central Florida. It's a toll road. Basically, you pay to drive on it. Used to, toll roads were a little easier to get through because there weren't that many people on them. Now there's just as many people on the toll roads as there are on non-toll roads. So if the toll road gets you there quicker, it's only gonna be like $3 or $4 to get wherever it is you're going. It's worth the money. But they're growing. Every time I go down there, I'm in Orlando once a month for about a week, roughly. And so every time I go down there, they're constructing some new roads on the Central Florida Expressway. Here's some of our transmission projects with FTL. They're showing you kind of a big one here in South Florida. And at some point, we'll probably add the Argyle one that we did up in the Panhandle. I can't remember how many miles it was. I think 50 or 60 miles worth of transportation. It took about 4 years to complete survey for FDL. And then as part of that, we recently did a really large hydrographic survey over there in the Choctawhatchee Bay, where they were going to come across the bridge. We had to go out there, survey the bridge, and then we had to get some hydrographic information along the Choctawhatchee Bay Bridge out of Destin. Solar projects. So these are really big. We had dinner with FPL back in September, I think it was, with the head of the solar department there at FPL. They're doing down around Lake Okeechobee. There's thousands and thousands of acres of sugarcane fields that they are turning into solar farms. When I was a kid, I was born in West Palm Beach. We spent a lot of time down in Lake Okeechobee, largest natural lake in Florida, obviously. Can't remember if it's southeast, but anyway, it's one of the largest natural lakes, and there's tons of canals and things that were built around it that drained a lot of the Everglades. And then they turned those into years and years and years ago into sugarcane fields. And now the sugarcane fields are becoming solar farms. And one big initiative that FPL has is to go carbon neutral by 2035, I think. Not net neutral, right? Whereas they offset how much with the solar farms, they're not offsetting the carbon footprint from the other methods of generating electricity. They're wanting to go complete neutral, carbon neutral by 2035. And so when we were sitting down, the guy that we were talking with, he knows how many kilowatts and all those other things that requires, and how many, some of these solar farms can generate. And in order to do that, they've got to really bump up production and design and construction of these solar farms. A lot of them are going up next to I-10, going east and west in Florida. So they're popping up everywhere. And a lot of times it's a private developer that is developing these things and leasing it back to FPL for power generation. Here's some of our subsurface engineering. Huge market in Central Florida. Every survey that you do, you have to go out and do subsurface utility engineering. We got to go out, we got to excavate, we got to pothole, see what's down there, see where it is. There's so much in terms of utilities underground in Central Florida until you really can't do a project without actually mapping, actually mapping the buried utilities. It's becoming a bigger issue up in our region, just because of the growth that we've seen over the years. And so we actually have that unit in Panama City now. We were loaning it over to our North Carolina group, and we're working on putting together a SU crew that's going to manage all of our subsurface utility engineering in Northwest Florida. So we don't have to bring the Orlando team up and work on all of our stuff. We actually, because we don't have SU or didn't in-house in Panama City, we lost. I say we lost. We still had the contract for that Tyndall Zone 4 I was telling you about earlier, but a portion of that contract was SU, and we hired Southeastern Surveying. Have they come up? Southeastern?
No.
Tate Flowers.
Yep.
One of the guys I went to school with works there, but or what Jason and I went to school with. Graham remembers it well,
Yes.
sure. Anyway, they are doing all of the SU work out at Tyndall. So they've got a crew out there almost dedicated 5 days a week now for the past 2.5 years. Really big contract. We just didn't have the folks to do it at the time. This is kind of one of what gaps look like generally when our SU crew gets done. So they'll find something, take pictures of it. They'll write down the information that they can come up with here, and then they'll shoot it with GPS or whatever field station that they have there. And then we do a report like this, and that goes to our design team. This is why you need SU, right? So this is a big storm structure. This is at a power generating plant in Panama City. They call it the Smith plant. It was a coal plant, and then it turned into natural gas. It's out here on the bay, and they would they would suck water in from the bay to cool their little cooling towers. And so they had a couple of issues out here and we had to come out and excavate all this out, survey all this so they could figure out what they had. The plant had been there for a long time. I think it's probably over 100 years old now. They're not doing anything at the plant anymore. It's shut down. But when they were always running into stuff like this. We always show this because it's one of the worst ones, or one of the more interesting ones. I won't say it's. And so here's a topo or a planimetric view of some utility mapping. This is out there at the Smith plant, so you see it looks like spaghetti everywhere. There's cooling lines, there's electric lines, there's drainage, sewer, all kinds of things out there. Putting maps together like this really helps with these large companies in terms of resource tracking and resource mapping. So they know what they do and don't have, so that their own physical plant folks or whoever works out there can go out and prepare something if needed. This is NEMO. This is our hydrographic survey vessel. Don't know why they painted it, but they did.
Right.
Well, we have a guy that we work with who has a little bay boat, and his bay boat is actually that green color. And I think he made the decision to paint that thing green. But anyway, we work for the same clients every year with our hydrographic system. We go out, we do beach monitoring. We go out. Bay County has an erosion control line that goes all the way down the beach. And what they do is basically they went in, they came up with a line where the county would agree to rehab the beach over time. So when you have erosion, storm events, things like that, they'll come out, they'll dredge offshore and pump the sand back up on the beach. It's the same sand, so they just put it back up on the beach. But in order to do that, we have to come in and we have to survey so that they can come up with how many square yard or how many yards of sand they need and where they're going to take it offshore. And so we come in, we have upland crews that start up at the dunes and work their way down to about chest deep in the Gulf. And then we have NEMO that comes in and they overlap, goes back and forth. And so these are probably some of our larger contracts. I think one of them this last year was $135,000 contract. In terms of survey, that's pretty decent size contract. And then we have some that are, 3, 4, 5,000. The Chevron, we have a fuel depot in Bay County where they bring the big ships in and offload fuel. It's a Chevron depot. They have a section out there. We survey it once a year. I think we charge them like $3,500. They'll do dredge design plans. One of the interesting ones we did here in the past couple of years, maybe on here, is one where they had to do a dredge design. They're building Eastern Shipbuilding is building a lot of Coast Guard cutters, and they dump them in right there in the bay. And so before they started dumping these large Coast Guard cutters in, they had to make sure that they had the depth that they needed so that the rig doesn't hit the bottom. And so we had to go out and state the location of the dredging and do basically as-built surveys. Pretty interesting job. I think Ryan's got a picture of a boat being put in.
It recently just launched.
Do what?
It just recently launched like a couple months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a $700 million contract for the Coast Guard cutters just in Panama City. This is one of our yearly beach monitoring surveys we do. This is the pass that goes in and out from the Gulf to San Andrew Bay there in Panama City. We survey this once a year as well. This is kind of one of the maps that we generate. You see there the contours. These are the check lines that we run, cross-section lines. So pretty interesting. Pretty interesting stuff. This is a color-coded depth map from these offshore surveys that we do. See right there, there's a sandbar. We've actually, if you take some of this data, we've got some, and I should have put it in this presentation, but the Copa Valley LiDAR that I was talking about earlier, they did the same thing and assigned some colors to that as well. You can see, if you've ever heard of Panama City, a lot of times you hear, especially around summertime, people drown out there a lot. People are coming to Bay County from places that aren't near the beach, and they're coming out and they don't understand undertow, right? So they get out there, they get out a little bit too deep, waves are coming in, then they get pulled out. They tend to, kind of get frightened, work really, really hard against the undertow. It's not going to happen. The best thing to do in that situation is just to float. You float really well in salt water, and the undertow will come out and take you one way or the other, and then you can circle back around and swim back to the beach. People usually panic and they get in a bad way and kind of drown. If you look at some of that Topo Valley LiDAR, you can see zones in there where it appears where where that water is going to come together and become an issue. So counties are looking at that, trying to figure out where to put lifeguards and where to put things, where people should swim. Here's one of the Coast Guard cutters. This is the area we were doing the hydrographic survey. This was pre-Hurricane Michael and post-Hurricane Michael, Gulf County. We spent a bunch of time doing some hydrographic surveys here so they could clean that canal up. That's a canal that goes straight out to the Gulf. Actually, Gulf is this way. And so this is kind of all built back up again. Looks nice, but this is what it looked like back in 2018. Here's some of our geospatial toys. We've got our drone LiDAR is up in our Gainesville, Virginia office. They do a lot more work for a company called Dominion Energy up there. And Dominion requires most of their stuff is flown with a drone. They're not in places up there, they're kind of mountainous. They're not in places where you really want to get back there and survey conventionally. Here's our iDrone that we use at ponds. We have that in Orlando, a lot of golf courses down there, a lot of small water bodies. We use the iDrone in those areas. Here's some of our airplanes that we have. Now we lease these planes, we don't own them. The LiDAR sensors that are in them are our LiDAR sensors. I'm not sure how much the LiDAR sensors cost, but I do know that the server upgrade that they had was over $1.5 million just for the data. And that's just the surveyor or the server that they have processed all of the data. Here's one of our LiDAR sensors here. How it kind of loads into the plane. One of the planes we had at one point was so small when they put the LiDAR sensor in there. They have a person that stays in the plane and monitors the LiDAR sensor the whole time. There's just enough room for him to sit kind of crouched in there and turn the LiDAR sensor on and off. So pretty big piece of equipment. Here's our OpTech Topo Valley. This is the pride and joy of the geospatial group. Green laser LiDAR works really, really well, up to I think about 60 to 80 feet, depending on the turbidity of the water. The cleaner and clearer the water, the better penetration you get. We've done some checks behind them. It's really, really good data. They do a lot of inland work with it. The only downfall, or what I would say issue with Topo Valley LiDAR is it does not like black water. It does not like river water. Anything that's got that kind of tannic stain to it, that laser does not penetrate. It gets absorbed by the dark color. It doesn't come back. So that's where we come in with our vessel. We go out there with the sounder and we pick that up. They marry the two together. This is the lower Withlacoochee River watershed. What's interesting about this one is, I think we got a picture on a bump for it. So these are springs down there in that Withlacoochee River that were previously unmapped that our Topo Valley LiDAR sensor found. There's a big write-up in one of the geospatial magazines a lady that I work with quite a bit, Emily Cliff. She's project manager of this particular job. And so they did a write-up on her and her team. Like I said, a lot of these areas out here were obviously unmapped before and were found while doing survey of the watershed. This is the Big Bend that I was telling you all about. We had surveyed this before we got these two. So these all connect down. So they go from up there around the Pensacola area all the way down. Our survey crew spent weeks driving back and forth setting control for this big survey. And here's some of the data that you can see that they picked up. It's color coded. Looks really, really good. Very dense data. Here's our other Regal sensor that we have. I think this is the one we bought. It was used. Company went out of business. We bought it. So we have 3 sensors. This is kind of an outline of kind of how the sensor operates, what it does. Are you guys doing any studies on LiDAR sensors like we used to do when we had photogrammetry?
Yeah.
Understanding the cameras, camera angles, and also, are you guys going through and working on that? So the lead in our office, Omar Nayagande, he's actually the author of a book regarding Topo Valley LiDAR and 3D model building with LiDAR sensors. I'll try to get his book. He's got a couple of them. I'll get one and bring it up here, and you guys can take a look at it. So here's some other projects. This is the MAR here. Jason Dolph is our acquisition manager. I work with him more than I do at MAR. MAR's more the operating unit manager. He's over most of the contracts. Post-disaster debris estimation. They use LiDAR data, go out there and figure out how much debris there was. They got to figure out, when you have a disaster like this, you have to figure out where to put all the debris, right? In Panama City after Hurricane Michael, we loaded our local waste facility with so much debris that it took it 30 years ahead of where they expected it. So 30 years of use in one hurricane event. We got involved in doing the survey for expanding it after the fact. But that's a very, very, until we go through this and we see stuff like this and we get involved in it, it's not something you really think about. But if you think about it, there's a lot that goes into post-disaster initiatives. And one of them is figuring out where to put all of the debris. You have to get rid of it somehow. It can't just stay out here on the street. So not only do you have to figure out how much you have to figure out where to take it. So here's some of the coastline mapping that we do. This is up in Norfolk, Virginia. One of the projects that they do up there, obviously big DOD port. Navy operates out of there. We get some contracts that go in there and survey occasionally to see if there's a sea level rise that's happening and what they may need to do to continue to operate those ports. Here's some of our LiDAR data. This is the Water Management District project. See right here, if you get into LiDAR and get into remote sensing and you want to, and this is an area that you want to, get in with your career, these are the things you're going to see. This is not what I see when we do topos, general stuff like that, but you can see the vegetation, things like this. You see down here, here's the stream bed, and it drops below and comes up like this. They have code that they write that will extract all of this data out and leave you with ground data. What goes into that, I'm not sure. I don't do it all the time, but we have a really good team of professionals. If you guys have anything you want to talk about in terms of geospatial analytics or anything like that, Dewberry is something that you think you might be interested in, but not general survey. I can get you connected with folks in Tampa, get you talking to the right people if you think this is where you want to take your careers. Seagrass mapping, right? One way to better understand coastal ecology and how well it's doing is by how well the seagrass is doing. If you have a good seagrass population, your water's clean and it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so one of the things that we've learned that we can do with LiDAR is map seagrasses. They look different when you have seagrasses on these DEM generations. And so you can map large areas of seagrass down in the Everglades and the flats where we have quite a bit of that down in South Florida. Really neat thing. Here's another LiDAR point cloud, going tops for treating for things like that. Again, when I was in school, remote sensing was photogrammetry. This stuff, if I was in school now, this is probably something I would be really interested in. But I was always interested in boundary work, section work, historic data, going through historical maps, GLO notes, things like that. Those were things that I was really interested in. My final project, my senior project, was a report on the public land survey system. Always enjoyed that. But this really is interesting to me. I just don't get to work in it as much. But we do have some folks that are always working in it. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Give them an idea about your co-op opportunity.
So we have opportunities in any one of our offices to come in and do a co-op. We have, I think, the ability to pay up to $3,500 or $4,000 worth of living expenses for the co-op opportunity. Obviously, some of the small firms, when I left Troy, or when I did my co-op, I did it with a smaller firm in Panama City. They went and rented a single bedroom. Actually, it was well, it didn't even have a bedroom. It's a studio apartment for me and my roommate here to live there while we work. Dewberry's not going to do that. The people that we went to work for, they rented it and they had to keep it for a year, and we were only there for 2.5 months during the summer. Dewberry's not going to do that, but what they will do is they will, give you some money for living expenses. One of the things we have available to us in my area is we have some really close clients and ties with land development, apartments, things like that. So we can kind of maybe work some of those kinds of things out. If you wanted to come down to Panama City, and I realize that, you want to come, you want to make some money. You don't want to spend all your money during your co-op on living expenses, right? So we try to offset that with some money. Dr. Ramroop and I were talking about some options for, if you graduate, you decide to come to work at Dewberry, kind of what are the things that you would be looking for. Some companies, even when I was here, they would come in and they would show you like an Excel spreadsheet of like your pay, right? Or what they could pay you. And if you put this many hours, I don't do that. Okay. I think that should be between the manager and the individual. What are your capabilities? What do you bring to the table? I wouldn't say that I would just say, oh, it's off the cuff, we would start somebody out at X. Well, maybe one guy's capable of that. Maybe the other guy's not quite committed to his career yet. So that doesn't work for me. So what I try to do is try to meet the people, figure out what, I feel like you could be capable of, and then give you all the opportunity to take ownership of your career. One of the things that we will work towards, and I was talking to Dr. Ramroop, is some people are doing, paying off your student loans, maybe paying some of the stuff, things like that. Dewberry has, on occasion, done starting bonuses, right? Those bonuses can be different amounts, things like that. Those bonuses can be used to offset some of your tuition, right, after the fact. The way Dewberry does that is, depending on the amount of the bonus to start, you have a prorated period of time, right, that you work. So if it's, one amount and it's a prorated 2-year time frame, then they basically deduct that monthly all the way out. If you leave any time before then, you got to pay back a portion of that bonus, right? So it's not, hey, you have to come work for us for 2 years for that bonus. You can't leave, you can't go anywhere. Nobody's gonna make you sign anything that says that. But we have we have the ability to do that for the right candidate. One thing I really wanted to hit on, and one thing that I think Dr. Manbrook knows about me is, I'm only gonna take somebody I feel like I can help, somebody I feel like is going to take ownership of their career. I think what separates Dewberry from some others is we're not gonna put you in an assembly line of lot and block survey. It's not gonna happen, right? You're not gonna be given a drawing or given a job, told to draw it, turn it into somebody, get it redlined, get it back, redraw it. You're just a CAD technician at that point. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a CAD tech. I'm looking for somebody that wants to learn what we're doing, wants to take ownership in what they're doing, and I want to provide them feedback, and I want to provide them opportunities to take ownership of their career, and at some point take a management position of some sort to manage that, right? And at some point, if you do what you do well enough, depending on where you go, you probably will do very little survey and more management. That's just part of it. So anyway, I want to provide whoever wants to come to work with us with the opportunity to grow. I'm not trying to come in and hire 6 people and just stick them in places and put them in a cubicle and have them draw. That's not really what we're about. We're about trying to teach you how to do what you're learning to do here, whatever state you go to work in, and make it a professional career and not just a job. So that's really what we feel like we have that separates us from maybe some of the others. And there's some really good companies out there. I'm friends with a lot of people at different companies, and they do really, really good work. We're all looking for graduates, people to come in like-minded. So you all have really great opportunities to go just about anywhere you want to go and do just about anything you want to do. Just remember that if you get into a place and you feel like you're just stuck doing one thing all the time, over and over and over again, maybe that place isn't the right place. Give another place a call. I went to work for a small survey firm. I was there probably 6 months. They pulled me into the office. Next thing you know, I was running smaller jobs by myself. Had oversight. I had mentorship, but they let me kind of do my thing and they let me learn. So that's the way I approach things. I feel like I did better because of that. There were people that started around the same time I did that didn't progress as quickly as I did, not because they were any less intelligent than I was or dedicated, but because of the opportunities that I had. So, you spend all this time here at the school, make sure when you go to work wherever you go, you understand what your value is. And if you're not getting the mentorship that you need, pull the trigger, go to somewhere where you can have that. I'm not advocating bouncing from place to place to place. I'm just saying, surveying is kind of a relational job. You don't find the right surveyor that's training you the way you need to be trained, then you need to be something else. Any questions? Good. Thank you all for having us here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I always enjoy coming out. I think it's right that her way we live here.